Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
I want to thank you guys for joining us this week. We're going to look back at last week's PBC on SHOWTIME card, including, of course, Mark Magsayo's upset win over Gary Russell Jr. And in today's toe-to-toe section, we're going to pull attributes from today's boxers to create the perfect fighter. And last, but definitely not least, undefeated super featherweight Chris Primetime Colbert will be joining us. Speaking of Colbert, it was announced this week that he will take on WBA 130-pound champion Roger Gutierrez Saturday, February 26th at the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas, live on PBC on SHOWTIME. Mike, what are your thoughts on that fight?
I like the fact that Colbert is getting his shot at a title. It's time for him. I think he's one of the more gifted fighters in the world and is approaching or is at his peak right now. So, it's his time. Gutierrez is a solid, rugged guy, too, on top of that. And I think he learned a lot in 3 hard fights with Rene Alvarado and some other good fighters. I think this is a tough assignment for Gutierrez, though, because I think Colbert is a really special fighter.
Yeah, I think it's a tough assignment for both of them, quite frankly. And I think that it just goes to show, though Colbert's been sort of flying under the radar, he's really taking on tough opposition. And there's another one. I mean, this isn't a gimme belt, not a gimme champion. Mm-hmm. Now, the co-feature on this card would probably headline a lot of other boxing events. Undefeated 140-pound phenom Gary Antoine Russell taking on savvy former world champion Victor Postol. Mike, that fight could steal the show.
Absolutely. It's funny. I actually thought about our conversations about Terrence Crawford's resume. For years you've been saying that Victor Postol was his toughest fight, which is probably true for a long time. But the fact is that Postol's a good, experienced fighter, as he demonstrated against Jose Ramirez in his last fight. Right. How I feel about Russell. I think he could be a star. But this is a test. I look forward to seeing how he does in this fight, because this is a real fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I was surprised to hear about this fight. I mean, Russell ultra talented, but this isn't a step up. This is a whole flight of stairs right here in taking on Victor Postol. So Russell said he's going to knock him out in 5. There's that youthful confidence. We'll see, but this fight could actually steal the show. I truly do believe that. And with that, let's jump right into the week in review. Last Saturday, PBC on SHOWTIME returned with a fantastic triple header from the Borgata in Atlantic City. And in the main event, the undefeated Mark Magsayo dethroned longtime champion Gary Russell Jr., capturing the WBC World Featherweight title via 12-round majority decision. Mike, give us your take on the fight.
Well, my first thought is it's a shame that Russell ended up fighting with one arm, so we didn't get to see both guys at their best for the entire fight. I'll add this, though. I think the most remarkable thing about this fight was Russell's ability to be competitive against a world-class opponent without a right hand. He's just a one-handed fighter, and he was still competitive. That shows you how talented this guy is. Yeah,
I mean, seriously, that was really, really impressive. But what would have happened if Russell hadn't been injured? That's the question.
Right. I think Russell would have won a decision, but it wouldn't have been maybe as easy as some people might think. I thought Magsayo was giving him some difficulty the first few rounds with his own hand speed. He does have really quick hands, and his counter punching. All 3 judges gave the first 2 rounds to Magsayo, so he got off to a good start. That said, I think Russell was in the process of figuring Magsayo out, would have taken control. If he could be competitive with one hand, you got to think that he would have done considerably better with 2 over 12 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that on one hand, you could say, well, when he had 2 hands, Magsayo was getting the better of him, but perhaps Russell was just starting to get in the groove. What about the decision? Russell came out afterwards and said he thought he won 10 rounds to 2. Obviously, it was a close fight. It was a majority decision, or at least the judges thought it was a close fight. What did you think?
I thought the decision was fine. I was raised my eyebrows when I read the comments by Gary. I scored at 116, 112 for Magsayo, but I think it's a close 116, 112. That was a close competitive fight. I just gave the edge to Magsayo because I think Russell made Magsayo miss a lot of punches, but more than enough of them got through for him to win the fight, in my opinion. Russell was brilliant in some ways, but he didn't throw a lot of punches, so it would have been difficult to give him the decision, I thought.
Yeah, that's, I think ultimately the activity and the injury came back to haunt him, because although he probably was more efficient, and I didn't see the punch stat numbers, but likely landed a higher percentage of his shots. Magsayo was so much busier than he was, and some of those shots, as you mentioned, did indeed get through. That, if he landed 4 or 5 shots out of 30, 40, that might have been enough to win him around. So the decision didn't surprise me. Now, would you like to see a rematch?
I think Russell deserves a rematch, but Magsayo isn't going to wait around for Russell's shoulder to heal, although we obviously have no idea how long that will take. We don't know if he's going to have surgery. We don't know if he just needs to rest it. He mentioned that this is a problem he's had for many years. It might be smart to consider surgery. I don't know. Yeah. I would like to see the rematch, though. I think this one just left, more questions than it answered. So, yeah, I would like to see it.
Now, if we don't get a rematch, who would you like to see each fighter face next?
I think the obvious answer from Magsayo is Ray Vargas, who's ranked number 1 by the WBC going into the fight. So he's your top contender, top challenger. I think Vargas would be a tough fight for him. I also like a unification bout with Kiko Martinez. That makes sense for obvious reasons. As for Russell, if he doesn't fight Magsayo again, he's a legitimate opponent for any of the 126-pound title holders. Or maybe he moves up and fights the winner of the Colbert Gutierrez fight.
Yeah, I like that fight. Or maybe he fights Leo Santa Cruz. I like that fight as well. I like Leo Santa Cruz for either one, Magsayo or for Russell. Maybe Brandon Figueroa. He's talked about moving up. I don't know if he will, but if he does, there's a good opponent for Magsayo as well. Now, the co-feature, in my opinion, was an early candidate for Fight of the Year. The last time Subriel Matias and Petros Ananyan went to war, Ananyan walked away with the decision and handed Matias his lone professional defeat. This time they went to war again, but Matias was simply too much. I mean, he battered Ananyan, dropped him, and ultimately got the stoppage win prior to the start of the 10th round. What did you make of Matias's performance?
I thought it was terrific. That's what I expected of him in the first fight. He just stood toe-to-toe with a really, really tough guy and just busted him up, like you said, sort of like in an old school way, and I just loved it. And remember, I said last week that he needs to be more mindful of his defense. Now, that might sound silly based on what we saw. He's never going to make defense a high priority, but Ananyan landed only 21% of his punches, according to CompuBox. So I think he actually did keep that in mind. Matias didn't just stand there and take shots, for the entire fight. He was the one delivering the shots, which is why we ended up where we ended up.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. He did take some shots, which is to be expected given the style and given the type of fight that it was. But I was getting flashbacks of James Toney versus Vasily Jirov, the way he was so relaxed in there, just, letting the combinations flow effortlessly, breaking his guy down, landing to the head and body. I thought it was a brilliant performance. How good is Subriel Matias?
I think he's really good, especially against the guy who stands in front of him like Ananyan. I think he also has a good style for a guy who can move, though. The way he stalks his opponents, the way he goes to the body, that can wear anybody down, and he's just going to be relentless. He's never gonna stop. I don't know what happened in that first fight. He faded in that first fight, and he couldn't explain it, and I can't explain it either. But in this fight, he looked like a machine. He just kept going and going and going. I don't know whether he's going to win at the very, very highest level. He could, but I just don't know. But I think he would make life miserable for pretty much everyone. Yeah. And I won't be surprised if he rises to the top one day soon.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either, and I wouldn't be surprised if I expect this guy to win a world title sooner rather than later. I did ask him about that first fight, and he said that he didn't have the greatest of camp. It was around the holidays, and he just didn't prepare the way he should have. And, that it was, we'd see the difference. And sure enough, we certainly did. Who would you like to see him face next?
Well, the first name that popped into my head was Josh Taylor, who's the undisputed champion. Why not? He's as legitimate as pretty much anyone. Although I think Taylor might be looking for a guy who's a bigger star right now.
Yeah.
He just has so much leverage. How about the winner of the is another? He could also fight the winner of the Russell Postol fight. I think that would be legitimate. Russell versus Matias would be an amazing matchup. And what about Regis Prograis if he wins in March? I think Matias is there. He could fight any of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the. I thought about that Russell versus Postol winner. That's a dream matchup, but there's so many good matchups. Robert Easter Jr. So many good matchups at 140 pounds for him. I just want to see him get in there with another name. The televised opener featured a super featherweight battle between Tuxdot Nyambayar and Sakurai Lucas. Lucas from excuse me, from Namibia to late substitute, and he surprised everyone. Controlled the last half of the 10-round bout against a heavy favorite in Nyambayar in a fight that ended as a split draw. Mike, what was your take on the fight?
Well, you just used the word I was going to use. I was surprised it was so close. I figured Nyambayar would handle this guy, get back into the win column, and then start targeting another title shot. That's how I think of him. Instead, he would have lost if that knockdown had been ruled a knockdown. We need to give Lucas credit. That dude has ability, and he came to win. He didn't come just for a paycheck or anything like that. He came to win. At the same time, something seems to be lacking in Nyambayar. He lost wide decisions to Russell and Colbert, which there's really no shame in that because those guys are so good. But then to draw with a guy that, basically we didn't even know anything about this guy is a sort of a red flag to me. He's 1-2-1 in his last 4 fights now, so I'm not sure where he goes from here.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, especially given the fact that Lucas was such a late substitute.
That too.
You mentioned the knockdown. It was in the 8th round. Lucas landed a counter left that put Nyambayar on the canvas, but it was ruled a slip by referee Eddie Claudio. Given that one judge had it 95-95, that might have been the difference in the bout. What were your thoughts on the decision and that knockdown or non-knockdown call?
Well, I also scored it a draw, so I'm okay with the decision, although I didn't count the knockdown. I just went with the referee's ruling. I think it was a fight that could have gone either way. As for the knockdown, I thought it should have been ruled a knockdown. He clearly went down immediately following a punch. I could see the ref thinking it was more a matter of balance maybe than the punch, but that doesn't matter. He went down after a punch. By the way, Jim Gray's interview with the referee afterwards.
Classic.
It was really awkward. It was just awkward as hell. It's kind of hard to watch by the end. It was like he was refusing to acknowledge what everybody was saying. So it was just kind of bizarre. But yeah, I think it should have been a knockdown. But it's not the most egregious one I've ever seen. But yeah, it should have been a knockdown.
Yeah, definitely should have been a knockdown. And I thought the post-fight interview sort of magnified the bad call, especially his reaction as they showed it in slow motion, like over and over and over again.
It was weird.
Would you like to see a rematch?
I suppose it would make sense to do it again, but I'm not sure anyone is clamoring for Nyambayar Lucas 2. I'm guessing Nyambayar will regroup and try again against somebody else. And Lucas is in a pretty good position. I think he'll try to build on a strong performance, and I think he earned another big fight. So I don't think we've seen the last of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on both counts. I think Nyambayar needs to go back, assess what happened, and he probably will want to look in another direction. But Lucas is absolutely deserving of another major fight. Now it's time. Well, actually, before we bring in our guests, just want to remind you guys in our prediction league that both Mike and I are 2-1, so no real heavy movement yet. It is time to bring in our guest this week. He is an undefeated super featherweight contender, widely considered one of the rising young stars of the sport. On Saturday, February 26th, he takes on Roger Gutierrez for Gutierrez's WBA 130-pound title in a PBC on Showtime headliner from the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas, Chris Primetime Colbert. Chris, how excited are you to finally have this fight announced and know that it's official?
Shit, I'm super excited. First, like I said, I want to thank God. I want to thank my team, Al Heyman, Sosa Crew, the whole my whole training staff, my whole family that's been holding it down for me. It's been a long time coming, and I'm finally here, to be honest. And but it to me is more so of an expectation. I already knew this was gonna happen Now it's just time to go out there and capitalize.
All right. And this is only your second fight in Vegas, but your first headliner in Vegas. How does that make you feel?
Shit. I'm not too big on Vegas.
Why not?
Every time I go there, it's something. I went there one time for a fight to work a corner. Got kicked out because they said my birthday was in an hour. The security guard let me go. One security guard let me go. Then another security guard came to me 20 minutes later when I was gambling and kicked me out. They called the police and all that. Gave me a ticket, like all this extra stuff. And then the next time I went, I lost $20,000 gambling.
Oof.
And then the last time when I fought there, I got sick. I caught the flu. I won, but I caught the flu the day before.
Wow. Well, let's see what it holds this time. Maybe third time's the charm.
I think I'm super ready for this. I know I'm super ready for this opportunity, but this time I hope Vegas just don't leave me with a bad taste in my mouth. I don't think I'm gonna go back after this one.
There you go. Okay. Give us your thoughts on Roger Gutierrez. What challenges does he present?
To be honest, I never even watched the guy fight. I never seen him fight. I don't know nothing about him. But we got 12 rounds come February 26th, and I don't think it's going to take me 12 rounds to adapt because I think I'm a human adapter. But whatever it takes, I will get that victory that night for sure.
You're from Brooklyn, but lately you've done more of your training in Florida, it seems. Is that
that's because I don't like the cold. I don't like the cold. I come to Miami because I don't like the cold. And then I got my other trainer out here that I added onto the team, Herman Caseta. He's a tremendous coach. He's a great motivator. I still with the same team. My dad is still on my team. I got my strength and conditioning coach, Rudy. My chef, Brandon. Like, it's still the same team. I got my brothers back home holding down the restaurant for me, putting in the work while I'm out here putting in the work. So it's still the same team, but we just have to take it elsewhere because it's too cold. I can't deal with the cold.
How's the sparring in Florida?
How's the what?
The sparring.
Oh, the sparring is good. My training team, they take a look at my opponent. I don't really look at them. They said they got sparring that fits his style.
Mm. Now, it's crazy looking at this fight. It's a world title fight. There seems to be a changing of the guard in boxing with a lot of young faces now popping up. Did you watch last Saturday's fight between Gary Russell and Mark Magsayo? And if you did, what did you think?
I thought Gary Russell, I thought it was a close fight still, regardless. Even being Gary Russell having one hand. But it shows that guy's not really on his level because he really had a hard time with that guy. Guy had a hard time beating Gary. And Gary only had one hand. And
who do you think won?
I thought the guy, Mark Magsayo, won.
Okay.
Fair is fair. You got to give it to him.
Gotcha.
But I don't think – I still look at Gary as a great fighter. He's an elite fighter. If he was 100%, it would have been not even close. But I'm looking to make a fight between me and Gary Russell definitely when I win this title.
So that's still the fight you want?
Yeah. He said he's not moving up to 130 unless he fights somebody with a belt. And I know I'm the man for the job because I'm about to get this belt. So now why not? Let's make this happen.
Well, that's crazy because, I mean, you just said right now basically you felt that he would have won the fight if he had two hands, that he's a great fighter. He would have dominated the fight. I give credit when credit is due. I'm not a hater. And I feel that he's a great fighter. Wow, and that's the guy you want.
Yeah, I tell him, listen, I'm going to give you respect. Respect is respect. I ain't going to sit here and act like he's not a good fighter, but
yeah.
Can he beat me? I don't think so. I know he can't beat me, but I'm going to be the guy to end his career.
Oof.
It's time. Fighters got to understand at certain point you got to know when to hang them up and let it go. At 32, 30, or 33, you can't come up and try to fight these young big dogs. You feel me?
Yeah.
You can't come up and fight these young big dogs. It don't work like that.
So when you were watching that fight on Saturday, did you feel like, I mean, what is it like to watch a fight that you might have been in? What were you thinking?
I wasn't thinking nothing, to be honest. I was just thinking Gary was going to dominate him. I didn't know he had a shoulder injury, so I just thought he was going to dominate him. But I know Gary Russell was not taking this fight with me unless it's worth his while. And now it's gonna be worth it. I got the belt. I got the belt. Ain't no, I'm getting the belt. I got the belt. The belt is mine. It's sitting on my shelf in my living room right now. A duplicate. I'm just waiting for the real one.
Russell, as you mentioned, Russell fought with one arm. Do you think boxers fight through injuries more than people realize?
100%. Like, I went into many fights with an injury. The Jamie Arboleda fight, I went in there with an injury. I went in with an injury. I came out with an injury. My shoulder popped out in the third round, and I fought through it, and got to knock him out in the 11th. The tug fight, I had a bruised rib, a fractured rib. I was sparring with Michelle Rivera. He hit me in the back. My whole rib shift. But these are things that we know that's gonna happen. It's come with the sport. So you just gotta be prepared. You gotta work on it accordingly to make it through the fight. And the thing is with these fighters, they don't understand. God bless us with two hands, and God bless us with legs. Use them. Use them. That's why I'm blessed, and I can say that I'm blessed to be able to fight lefty and righty. So you ain't catching me slipping. It's not you ain't gonna catch me slipping. I hurt one hand, I'm gonna switch and fight the other way.
There you go. When you first won the WBA interim title against Jezreel Corrales in 2020, the champs in the division were Leo Santa Cruz, Tevin Farmer, Miguel Burchell, Jamel Herring, and Rene Alvarado. So much has changed since then. What are your thoughts on the division now?
I mean, the division is still stacked. Me and Shakur Stevenson being the top dog, I just think that the top rank side got it much easier than I do because they handed him the belts over there. A fight with the WBC champion right now, that's cake work. That's cake work for him. That's cake work for me. That's cake work for him.
Valdez, you're talking about?
Yeah, that's cake work. That's cake work.
A lot of people think he's a top fighter.
Yeah, a top fighter in Mexico, yes. I have a field day with him.
Oh. So
but
what
listen,
are you?
All respect to him, though. He made it to become a world champion. All respect to him. Like I said, there's no hate in my blood. I don't hate on nobody. But let's be real, he's not that guy.
So what are your goals for 2022?
Right now, my goals is only to focus on winning this belt on February 26th, and we go from there. Oh yeah, and then I want the Gary Russell fight right after.
Do you feel like this is going to be your true breakout year?
I don't know. Oh yeah, definitely. If I get the Gary Russell fight, breakout year, because I'm gonna show something that they've never seen before. I'm gonna dominate him. I'm gonna beat Gary Russell's bad.
I love this.
Like it won't even be close.
Wow.
Okay.
It might be worse than Lomachenko did him.
Oof.
Okay.
That's how I'm coming.
Very good. You'll be fighting Gutierrez obviously on a big platform. Do you think in terms of putting on a show for the fans, or is it just about having your hand raised, especially in a title fight?
Listen, to be honest, like I know the fans play a big part in a career, but me, I don't really focus too much on the fans. I'm more focused on getting a win. I don't care how I look. If I'm ugly, not sharp, I don't matter to me. Only thing I care about is being the winner, pronounce the winner on February 26th. That's the only thing I care about. It never. Of course, I want to go in there and like I'm gonna let you know now. I don't plan on this going 12 rounds. I got a lot of people coming out to Vegas. The tickets are selling fast, and I want to go enjoy myself after this long camp. I was in basically 2 camps back to back, and I want to go enjoy myself. I'm planning on making this quick bet, like no later than round 10, and then I'm gonna go to the casino right after and bet on round 10. Number 10. And roulette and try to win at least 50,000.
Okay. Final thoughts. Give us your prediction. How does this fight play out?
And the new. And I'm planning on knocking him out.
Love it.
Excellent stuff. All right, Chris. Great to catch up to you. Best of luck in this fight. We're really looking forward to it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Saturday, February 5th. Superstar Keith Thurman is back.
Here comes Thurman.
And he's going toe-to-toe with former champion Mario Barrios. This will fly.
Putting it all on the line. What a fight!
Then, get ready for the return of Leo Santa Cruz.
The time has come.
As he faces Keenan Carbajal. It will be a night to remember. Live on pay-per-view. Buy now on the Fox Sports app and watch on any screen you want.
It's time for Mike and I to go toe to toe. This week's topic is the perfect fighter. We're going to create the perfect fighter using attributes from today's group of boxers, and those attributes are hand speed, power, defense, chin, jab, footwork, ring generalship, and skill set. So with that, Mike, we are going to start with hand speed. Why don't you kick it off?
Okay, so I don't know, over the last 5 or 6 years, I probably would have gone with Gary Russell Jr., who I think still has incredibly quick hands, but I'm gonna pivot. I'm gonna go with a new generation fighter and say Shakur Stevenson, among a number of young rising stars with uber quick hands. There's so many young guys who have really quick hands. Anyway, I don't watch too many fights and think or notice, wow, that dude has really, really fast hands. I do with Stevenson. It really kind of stands out to me. He doesn't have the power that some guys have, but man, his hands are blurs.
Yeah, I like Stevenson's hand speed, and he's someone that came to mind as well as Russell. I still think Russell's faster than him, but I went with Ryan Garcia. I think this kid may have the fastest hands in the sport. Also, Gervonta Tank Davis is another one with super duper fast hands. But I mean, I've seen Ryan Garcia land left hooks in a blink. You know, a very, very impressive hand speed. So I choose it by Takeover the other guys that I mentioned. Let's move on to the next category, which is power. And I try to, think outside the box too here. Actually, I really didn't, but I feel like Deontay Wilder is the obvious choice time and time again. So I went with somebody different, someone who isn't that far behind Deontay Wilder, Gervonta Tank Davis. We've seen the power at 130. We've seen the power at 135. And we've also seen the power at 140. I think he has a strong case regardless, whether there's a Wilder or not. But I wouldn't be surprised if Gervonta Tank Davis carried his power all the way up to 147.
I want to make one quick comment about Ryan Garcia. So if you're right, and he has the quickest hands, and he also is one of the biggest punches, also pound
scary.
for pound. So it's a little bit scary. I'm not sure he does have the quick hands, but that's really hard to quantify. I think all these guys have quick hands.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to power. I'm you know what? I thought about Davis, a few other guys, but I'm going to go with Deontay Wilder until he retires. I always think heat-seeking missile with an underappreciated delivery system. His right hand is one of the greatest weapons in the history of boxing, and he's still, I think it's still at its best. So I couldn't pick against Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, well, we saw it. We saw it, drop Tyson Fury twice in the last fight. The man has dropped every single person he has faced. So, I mean, I have no qualms with that pick whatsoever. Let's move on to defense. Who you got?
This was kind of a fun category for me. Also one of the hardest. I actually had trouble with this. I thought about Canelo Alvarez, who has turned himself into a good defensive fighter. I think Vasily Lomachenko is a good defensive fighter. But you know what I did? I decided to check, just out of curiosity, I decided to check CompuBox just to see who had the lowest opponent connect rate. And that fighter, by far, it wasn't even close, was Dmitry Bivol. Only 12%. His opponents land only 12% of their punches against this guy. So Loma and Demetrius Andrade were next at like 18 plus, which is a lot more than 12. So I'm going to go with Bivol. I think Bivol must be an incredible defensive fighter.
I like that choice. Bivol is a very, very good defensive fighter. I think the numbers might be a tad misleading, but because he's a very safe fighter too.
But he had the highest, before you go on, he had the highest plus minus rate though. The difference between the punches landed and the punches allowed. So he lands enough, certainly enough.
Oh no, he certainly lands enough, but I mean, he's, I have no issues with him.
He's not Subriel Matias.
Right. No, he's no Matias. I went with the guy we saw on Saturday night, Gary Russell Jr., who I think is extremely hard to hit. And we saw that when he had just one shoulder working against a very aggressive, young, hungry, determined fighter, Mark McSally. But we've just seen it over the years against a ton of guys, Jojo Diaz and Kiko Martinez and on and on and on. Many, many fighters have found Gary Russell Jr. really, really hard to hit, and that's why my choice here.
That's a really good call. I actually thought of that too, and I was going to base it just on what we just saw. It sort of reaffirmed everything I've always thought about Russell. He sort of had to prove it, and he did.
Right.
Yeah. He was like impossible to hit. So yeah,
he proved a lot on Saturday night. Actually,
yeah, he really did.
It happens like that sometimes, right? Where you learn more about a fighter in a loss than you do in all their prior wins. I think that was the case for him. What about chin?
This was pretty easy. Maybe it's almost too obvious to me because I thought of Andy Ruiz Jr. I think he has a ridiculous granite chin, but I went with Canelo Alvarez. He's fought some big punchers, or many big punchers over the years, but the only time I ever remember him being hurt or stung was against Jose Cotto, Miguel's brother, and that was back in 2010. So that's the past 12 years of a lot of hard power shots that have had little to no impact on this guy. And of course, he's never been down. So I think, look at his neck. He's one of those guys with this really thick neck like Mike Tyson used to have. It's really hard to hurt a guy like that. I think he's got a granite chin.
Oh, no question he has a granite chin. That's why he's my choice as well for the best chin. Not going away. I think the Charlo twins probably have something to say about that. Jamal and Jamel Charlo, two of the best chins in boxing, in my opinion. But Canelo has proved it over so many different divisions. I mean, we've seen him take shots at 154, 160, 168, and 175 and barely been buzzed. I think the last time he was truly buzzed was by when he was like 19 years old against Jose Cotto. Bottom line, the guy's got an impeccable chin, no question about it. So he is my choice as well. What about jab?
So I'm sticking with the old guard with jab too. So I guess I'm kind of going back and forth here with young guys and old guys, but I'm going with Gennady Golovkin in this category. Just like I stuck with Wilder and Power, I think I'll stick with Golovkin until I have a reason not to. I think he still has a really good old school jab, and it still has the impact of power punches half the time. It's a really hard, stiff, punishing jab. I guess we'll have a better idea where his jab stands and everything else for that matter when if he fights Ryota Murata, but I think he still has it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the last time I saw him fight. I went with Jamal Charlo, who has a great jab. We've seen his jab knock down several of his opponents. I think at one time his jab knocked down 3 straight opponents. He really throws a stiff one, it varies it, throws a crisp right hand off of it. Excellent jab. It's what he used to beat Sergey Deverenchenko decisively. It was just with that shot alone, just a very, very impressive punch, perhaps the best punch in his diverse toolbox.
Arsenal.
Arsenal.
Yeah. That's a good call. I didn't think of him. That was jab was a hard one actually. There's nobody. Golovkin's always been known to have a good jab, so that's the one that jumped out at me. And I'm not ready to give up on Triple G yet, so I'm okay with my choice. But I like Charlo though. That's a good call.
Yeah, and there's no question that Triple G, at least when he was active, had arguably the best jab in the game. What about footwork?
This was the easiest category for me. That's Vasily Lomachenko. I've always been dazzled by Lomachenko's footwork. He always seems to be in the right position at the right time, which is such a big part of being successful in boxing. And I think he's just the master at it. He's a footwork wizard, if you will.
Wizard schmizzard. I think he has very good footwork, but as I told you, I think it's just flashier than most. I would go with Guillermo Rigondeaux. Footwork. There are a few candidates here. Terrence Crawford, I think, is one. Errol Spence as well. But I pick Rigondeaux, who can move, can knows how to position himself on the inside against the ropes, coming forward. Just a master. Even at his advanced age, we saw how good his footwork was against John Real Casimiro in his last fight. What about ring generalship?
Okay, this was maybe the hardest one for me. It just seems kind of hard to quantify. So, I thought of Canelo Alvarez. I originally was going to go leaning toward him. I thought about Naoya Inoue, who I think has great ring generalship. But I decided to go with Terrence Crawford. His combination of skills, his ring acumen, his poise, his experience is hard to top for me. Of course, you could say this exact same thing about Canelo and Inoue. Crawford always seems to be in control when he fights. He takes a few rounds to figure out. He breaks you down. He either stops you or wins by a wide decision. He's been tagged a few times, but that's only because of his fighting spirit, the risk that he takes. But I think that's calculated. I think he knows what he's doing at all times.
I like Terrence Crawford here. I considered him here and for our next category as well. I think he's pretty high up. He's pretty high up on most of these categories, actually, but I went with Errol Spence Jr. For ring generalship. It's a guy who can fight coming forward, a guy who can fight going backward, who dictates the action, can beat you at your own game, can beat you at his game. Just a very, very intelligent fighter in there. Gervonta Tank Davis, another fighter too, who I considered it. But I think Errol here, I've never seen Errol in a fight where he wasn't in control. So that's my pick for ring generalship.
Yeah, another guy that crossed my mind. Yeah, I agree with you. I like the fact that he's really diverse. He could beat you at his game, or he could beat you at your game. Yeah, so that impresses me.
All right, and the last category, last but definitely not least, skill set. Who you got?
Okay, so I went off the beaten path. I didn't go with maybe a guy that is so obvious. I don't know, some people might think this is obvious, but I went with Alexander Usyk in this category. He just does everything right, which is why he was such a dominating cruiserweight and has succeeded as a heavyweight. And of course, I think of his fight against Anthony Joshua. He reduced a much bigger, stronger guy. He was supposed to be one of the top 2 or 3 heavyweights into like just another victim. Now we could pick on Joshua and say all of his talk about his deficiencies and so forth, but he's a bigger, stronger, elite guy, and I think Usyk just handled him. Usyk to me is just so good and so smart in there.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I'll tell you what, I went off the beaten path as well, and took the road less traveled, and then I ran into you because I picked Alexander Usyk as well.
We didn't talk before. That's interesting.
Yeah, simply put, what can't he do? Can't
punch.
I think he's got a good punch too. Ask Anthony Joshua. He definitely hurt him in that 3rd round. And to move up and to be able to do that, I think is impressive. I've seen him land single seriously hard punches, but knockouts are just not his game. That's not what he comes to do. But I'm pretty sure he's the type of fighter that if you had to dig deep, he probably could get you out of there. I like Usyk here by. I mean, we have a lot of skilled fighters, but I like him by a lot in this, by a decent margin, I would say, in this category.
Yeah. Well, like you said, there are a lot of good guys. I mean, look what Canelo's built himself into.
Yeah, sure.
Look what Crawford has done. You talked about how good Spence is. Naoya, in a way, should be like one of these categories, right? He's just so good. So it's a hard thing to do, but Usyk really is just an incredibly smart guy in the ring. I mean, it's just amazing what he does. And plus, he's sort of like the hot guy, right now. He's coming off that victory over Anthony Joshua.
Yeah,
so it seems like a good pick at this moment.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But, I mean, fortunately, he's a proven guy, right? I mean, he was like the undisputed cruiserweight champion before this. So, I think that we can say his name with comfort, knowing that we're not jumping on a wave. The man is certainly one of the most proven fighters in the sport, a surefire Hall of Famer. And with that, we are going to end this week's show. We want to thank Chris Colbert for joining us, of course, and we want to thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to check back next week for more boxing talk, more banter, more action, and more interviews right here on the PBC Podcast.